I don't know when you want me to say this, so this doesn't have to be in the episode yet. But I need you to know I don't like The Saint. I don't.
You don't
like
care
it.
for The Saint?
I
Not
don't.
a big Saint guy?
No, I've seen it twice now. And I know it's one of Soren's favorite movies, so this breaks my heart because I love how much he loves it. I just don't think it works. It's not like way worse than a lot of 90s movies it exists around.
Mm-hmm.
There's something missing about it for me that doesn't really land.
Not a fan of Simon Templar,
bro.
for which it is titled.
Well, it's
You're not a fan of a high-tech thief and master of disguise.
You'd think I would be. I do like all the silly James Bonds of this time. You know what I mean? And I like Mask of Zorro, as you know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that's contemporary to this, and this movie's not like way worse than those movies. I just think like it just doesn't hang together for me. And I don't want to spend the whole podcast on that. I just it really struck me this time like, oh, I don't really like this movie, and I'm not sure why. You love it, right? You love this movie.
I think this movie rules. Yeah.
Rules.
Yeah, it rules. It rules the
hard rules.
Look, if you're talking international industrial theft and espionage, I think you'd be hard pressed to find another,
a better.
Yeah.
You show me a better suitor, sir, than the Saint.
than the seedy underworld.
So I realize, and like, you know, I'm not. I completely acknowledge there's some very good filmmaking in it. That stood out to me too. It was like, oh, this is good, filmmaking wise. I completely acknowledge that there's some real arbitrariness here, but like, and maybe it's when I watched it. I might have watched it too late. So like I just wasn't ready.
Don't feel bad about your wrong opinion about the Saint.
Yeah. But like I would say every movie has the burden, especially if it's a schlocky spy thriller, which a lot of movies are, has the burden of win me over so that I go with you. You know,
right.
And they never did. And so I found myself doing things like Elizabeth Shue is the inventor of cold fusion. It's like a sentence I wrote down. Exactly. So hot is exactly right. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, man, what are we doing?
She's got a heart condition. There's
a heart condition that she mentally overcomes.
Yeah.
Anyway, you know what?
What's wrong with that?
Nothing other than biology. Only biology is wrong with it. That's all. That's all there is that's wrong with it.
That's all. That's the only. All right. Yeah. Okay.
Also, and this is my last negative comment until probably our conclusion, when I'll make more. Okay. It's that like this role very clearly appealed to Val Kilmer because he just wanted to do a bunch of characters.
Oh,
and
it's great.
Some of them are very stupid. A few of them are very stupid.
It's so dumb.
Yeah,
it's so much fun.
Yeah,
it's
it is
so
fun
much
in that way. Yes.
I also like that. Have you seen that Netflix film Hitman with the Glenn Powell? It's the same idea, right? Just
a little bit.
Give me a way in which I can be a bunch of dum-dums.
He's no Val Kilmer, though. You know, or maybe
Val Kilmer is singular for sure.
He is the only Val Kilmer. You know, like I've never seen anyone be almost German like Val Kilmer.
He kills it. Also, he's so Australian.
Yes,
perfect Australian.
Yes, perfect. Yes, yeah, it's incredible.
Give this guy who was I looking at? Mad Max over here. Get out of town. Get out of town.
His old guy character with the bad teeth. He's having so much fun in that with that character.
He's like, oops.
He's like, I don't really believe in this cold fusion mumbo jumbo to you.
It's perfect.
It's so dumb.
The Saint, baby.
So dumb.
Let me ask you a question. Do you like James Bonds?
I do. I always thought they were a little stupid, and the ones that are less stupid are my favorite. You know, and
like what are the less stupid ones?
Yeah, that's the right question. I appreciate that you asked it. Skyfall is a less stupid one.
Okay.
Somehow I'm going to argue GoldenEye is a less stupid one.
Okay. So the
somehow
modern age,
Goldfinger,
but you're like Roger
Goldfinger.
Moore,
Boo,
Okay.
I never really cared for Roger Moore much.
the Timothy Daltons, the Sean Connerys. Those are two out of the
I like-
60s is out of touch.
No, I like the old moviness of Doctor No, and I like it.
Mhm.
I like From Russia with Love. Thunderball's okay. None of the Timothy Daltons super landed for me, but
License to Kill.
it's okay.
It's okay.
I really
All right.
preferred. Also Casino Royale is a good one. I genuinely preferred out of the Roger Moore ones, the Live and Let Die. That's the only
that's
one
a
of his
great
I
one.
really liked. The rest of them, like, they're okay.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, I think they are okay. They're
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, they're okay. I don't mind.
They're
like,
okay.
every movie that's trying for fun, like, hey man, like I'm not mad at you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not mad at you.
I'm not mad at you. Why would I be?
You know, of course, there's extremely problematic, like most history,
Mhm,
and also,
mhm.
but like in terms of like spy shit, I mean, they are kind of the golden standard because they're the one that got popular, right?
Of course,
The
right.
Saint has been around since the 1920s, dude.
This story,
This series of books published in
Oh.
1928.
I did not know
and
that.
they ran until 1983.
That makes me like this more. I'll give you that.
Yeah, and it was a huge. There was a bunch of Hollywood films in the 40s, basically, from 38 to 54. There was a radio series in the 40s with Vincent Price
Man.
as Templar.
That sounds amazing.
And probably most famously, the 1960s had Roger Moore as the Saint, which is very popular.
Vincent Price played.
Vincent Price did the radio series for the Saint. He's like,
What's your name, sir? What do you think my name is? It's Simon Templar.
It's a moniker of various saints.
Thomas
yeah,
More,
no.
named for the saint from 100 years ago. Anyway,
Yeah,
please continue.
It's just one thing that I think about when I think about the Saint, which I will
Uh-huh.
often do, is that we had James Bond. He was cool. He's very cool. But like the B team seemed to be the Saint, but I think the Saint is better.
I think
it's
that-
got more going for it. Is all I would
didn't
say.
Mission Impossible basically co-opt the energy we had for the Saint? Is that
Kind of.
fair to say?
Yeah, it's close. I would say Mission Impossible is closer to Saint than
Yeah.
the Saint is to James Bond.
100%. Yes.
There's high-tech gadgetry, but there's this idea of the seedy underworld that's completely missing from James Bond, which is like everyone's sending their A-team. You know, it's like James Bond is going directly to the KGB, the head of the KGB.
right.
You
Who
know,
also
it's not
happens
like
to have a cat and an eye patch. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas like Mission Impossible and The Saint, they're typically like, who's this fucking guy? He's just a guy. He's just a guy who has, some money, or he's a guy who has some files or
Well,
something.
I do want to come back to this. I don't want to derail your theory because I'm very interested to hear it. I do want to come back to the conversation about Ethan Hunt versus Simon Templar. I want to
Yeah,
come back
sure.
to that. Yeah.
Oh, I love to have that conversation
Yes.
with you.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's all I wanted out of this. Anyway,
I kind of
this
want to
is-
just do that instead of
I
my theory,
know.
but
This is Directorpiece Theater, by the way. You've had 9 minutes of it so far.
oh yeah,
This is one of your hosts, Adam Ganzer. I'm joined by my fellow colleague and director, General Handsome Boy and Lovable Man, Abe Epperson.
Hey.
Well, some things are just facts. That's not even building you
Yeah.
up. That's just a fact.
Oh.
And he has a beautiful theory about a not so beautiful movie, according to me, The Saint.
The Saint, the Saint, baby. Yeah. We talk about weird direction. Well, not weird direction, like
Mhm.
the
art of filmmaking.
the
in-
craftsman direction.
yeah.
Like
yeah.
like surprising movies you'd be surprised had some actual crafts work behind it. I mean, it's movies are obviously it's an alarming task to get all the light right and all the acting and all the sound and all that stuff, but also on top of that, the invisible hand of what makes storytelling interesting is a well told story itself. And we want to add to that. We want to
we want
tell
to
you some
elucidate that
examples
for
of
you.
that.
Yeah.
So you never be like at a party and be like, the Saint has some interesting directing.
You never be at a party
But-
and someone's like, "My God, this man's on fire. Does anyone know any Saint trivia to put him out?" And you not have it.
And it's not even trivia. I don't even know a lot about The Saint. I
Right.
just watch The Saint a lot, and I'm like telling you what I think when I watch The Saint. That's what this podcast is. Adam,
Yes.
let's say you're directing a scene between two people.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Let's not sweat
done
the
it before.
details
Yeah, yeah.
of the story. It's not as important. We could get into that, but that's not important for this exercise. One is standing still, and let's say the other is orbiting them.
Oh,
You know what
like
I
a
mean by
moon?
that, right? Yeah, like walking around in a circle or around the room,
Okay.
but like staying kind of, tethered to the one that's standing still, right?
So you don't mean this as a bit. You mean this in a normal, like, one person's
I'm
mobile.
asking you as a director.
Yeah.
I'm asking you
Yeah.
a specific question. So imagine that's on the table and you're directing the scene. What might that little bit of blocking imply in the scene between the two characters? Or if you prefer to answer the question in a different way, why might you direct a scene that way?
So almost always it's because the person who isn't moving has power, and the person who is moving is trying to change that somehow. Like, I think my favorite example of this that came to mind offhand is Silence of the Lambs, the scene where Clarice is trying to get Hannibal Lecter to tell the name of Buffalo Bill, and it's where he's like, "No, you're going to tell me about why did you leave the farm?" And they have that great conversation about the Screaming of the Lambs. That scene, he's sitting very purposefully and not moving in a cage, and she's sort of circling the cage in a way, and the director uses that motion to create a sense of power dynamics based on size change. That's the only reason. Like, anytime somebody's moving, they feel motivated to move by not getting what they want, usually, or by their want changing, which is usually what's happening with a person who's losing. So my instant answer is power dynamic.
Power dynamic,
Yeah.
absolutely right. And I would argue that you can do the reverse of it, right?
Yes,
There's
absolutely.
numerous times in which I can think of a character who's the orbiter is now
Like
claiming,
military or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we see this sequence in The Wire with Stringer Bell when he kind of like takes over control of the council. He's walking around the room,
Right.
picking apart the paint on the wall and such. This is his space now. This is his domain. So you can cut it up many different ways, but I'm glad you identified the one that I actually think is relevant to the Saint, which is the one who's orbiting them, the one who's standing still, actually has the power because they're anchoring, just a simple, like going back to celestial bodies, they're the ones with mass. That's why a moon orbits the Earth. We orbit the sun. And the whole idea of the Saint, and I am taking the Saint very seriously from here on in. I want everyone to know that. It's a silly suggestion, but when you look at the work here, I don't know. It's like, this is good work. So Simon Templar, the whole idea behind the character of the Saint is that he's a chameleon, right? And in addition to that, he's very cool and collected under pressure, right? He's very almost cold to the reality of the world because he can always just kind of adapt. He's just resourceful, like most of these heroes are. And almost all scenes, he seems like he's got a contingency for everything because he's so cool and collected. And it gives the vibe that he's in control. And that is the word that you used, I believe, power dynamic, control. So our task as a director, and what I wanted to talk about today, as it was for Philip Noyce in 1997, which is to introduce a character exactly like this. You want not just to let the script spell it out for everyone, but you want to use scene work to verify that in the mind of the viewer, that is true as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So today we're kind of talking about how you introduce simple traits about characters using simple things like blocking and obviously performance. and it's and how it's not just about how you direct an actor to inhabit the role, but it's about how you direct those that interact with the actor.
This is great. We've never really had a clean conversation about blocking.
And
it's a huge part of what directors do.
Which is why, I don't go to high and low in Kurosawa. I go to where the money is. I go to Noise, and I go to the Saint, baby. So let's talk about this orbiting a character question. So we get 3 introductory scenes in the Saint where, like, in one instance, someone hates him. He's a little boy, and it's the priest is like, fuck you, little boy. And then we get one case where Emily Mortimer on a plane
is being seduced by Spaniard Saint.
And then we get the kind of introduction of the Elizabeth Shue arc, which is kind of similar, but it's more of like intrigue. It isn't absolute just like, that I want to fuck that. It's like, it's a romance, so it's their meet cute. And so wherever that happens in like a museum in catacombs. Do you remember like where he's Thomas More and he's laying down and he's drawing her?
It's a museum. The person he is
it's a museum.
Incredible.
Thomas More.
Yeah, Thomas More is the Val Kilmer version of Thomas More is incredible.
Yeah, and he's named Thomas More because Thomas More is the name of a saint. But I don't know where that space is. I don't even know where that space is. I don't know. It feels like someone's buried there. I don't know. Maybe it's just a museum.
A lot of concrete. That's for sure.
There's also grates. I don't know of many museums that just have like liminal grates.
we need to talk about 90s Russia at the end of this too. Like, so that's 2 things I'm saving. Yeah, I'm saving for later. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway.
So in all 3 of these cases, the blocking and the scene work, like basically just the staging of everything, is Kilmer is just static. He sits or lays down while the others orbit him. And I'd argue it's to suggest a form of quiet control. If he's the center of the attention, kind of like you were picking apart, regardless of how you feel about him, you hate him, you love him, you just are intrigued, he's running the scene, right? So his character always keeps his responses brief, and this is where we kind of get into characterization, which implies you have to kind of coax things out of him. He controls your actions not just by the dialogue and what's in the script, by literally how Noyce is setting it up. If you want to interact with him, you're going to have to talk to him. He's not going to talk to you. So he kind of treats him like a kitty cat.
It's always seduction with him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is kind of where we get to the next point of how we introduce, Simon Templar, which is stasis and using smaller movements in those scenes. So this is less blocking. It's more Kilmer's performance, but I just want to continue that. Like, you probably noticed, I definitely see it, but it's arguable. Like, to me, Val Kilmer's performance when he is someone else, it's like 3/4 to half speed the entire movie.
Yeah,
right?
he's very slow
actions like a sloth.
Yes,
especially when it comes to the shoe scenes. And while that's the actor's choice, I think it's simpatico with how they're kind of building the character, right? In the same way, he's orbited by others, like a slow roll by the performer, like kind of emphasizes that things are happening at my time, and like also that my time is different from the time that you see elsewhere, which is a great instinct for both the actor and director if they wish the character to seem almost superhumanly in control or at ease. And this is where I noticed something else that popped up a lot in these introductory scenes. When he was static, there'd usually be an element in frame that was small but had rapid movement. And the examples I found were in the plane with the cross being dangled and spun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He kind of lifting the prop to show he is in control of something that kind of feels chaotic, but it's like so small. He dwarfs it in frame. So it's like a tiny little toy he controls, like a kitty cat. And the other example is that this kind of happens with like the lockpick when he's a kid, and then later when he's breaking in the vault, we see him spin and control it with like a very familiar hand, like he's used it a million times, right? And that's another way in which it's like, this is my domain, but also like I control chaos, which is, again, this could entirely be, this could not even be the director. This could all just be Kilmer, but I don't think so. I think that they're kind of like thinking in the same instinct here.
Do you think so he does have a thing for creating sort of restless motion in other characters, like very famously the coin and in Tombstone, or like chewing gum in Top Gun. Like, do you think so? I'm sure
Kilmer,
you talk about it.
I think so.
Yeah. I'm just pointing.
No, I mean, like, I think that that's a Kilmer mainstay. Like, I think that is very astute. As an actor, he likes to kind of find a way to distract into a prop or into a way of being. For a lot of other people, like Daniel Day-Lewis, it's like a gate. It starts with the walk, right? And this is like what these actors have talked about as the part of the process. Another thing I just want to mention about, just because I like the Saint, the lockpick.
Yeah. I
love that prop as a
it.
metaphor is very cool because it's an item that he made himself, so it's custom tailored to his needs. Kind of shows his resourcefulness, but more importantly, it's a lockpick, it's a cipher, it's a knife, it's a Swiss Army knife that is like whatever's needed at the time. Just not a comment on direction, just a cool little story element that's like, I don't know, James Bond, which was, or even Mission Impossible. They don't have that story element thing like that. Like, they don't have metaphor like that, right?
They don't build out the life of a spy in the same way this movie does.
Point is, the Saint is better than James Bond.
No, all right.
That's my point.
Okay.
That's my point here.
All right.
I want to talk about background action.
That is good directing, though, by the way. It might have been in the script, but like, as a director, creating a prop, working with your art department to create a prop that suggests
that's like a metaphor for
him. It's a metaphor for him, which is cool, but also it sort of gives a sense of what his life is like as a spy,
right? Because it's familiar.
Well, and we're looking for things that feel like that's who he is, and that is a prop that helps us have something that's grounded,
right?
So anyway, just adding on to your point.
Point one to the Saint.
Yes, take it. Take the point.
I want to talk about background action.
Okay, great.
So we're talking about like the juxtaposition or the dynamics as a part of the toolkit of the director, right?
Mm-hmm.
Using that little spinning crucifix, when he's super slow and on the plane. Another thing I noticed was scenes, especially early before it just becomes like the second half just becomes a big chase, a sequence of chases. But when Templar talks to Tretiak, who's the main villain, he's the main Russian who's like trying to vie for power and do a coup against, like, I guess, the democratically elected Russian. He talks to Tretiak at the train station because he's like hiring him.
Yeah.
He's hiring Templar to steal Elizabeth's shoes, cold fusion, or fission or whatever the fuck, whatever. Also, it happens at the pub with Elizabeth's shoe, is that when you look at the background of those shots of Templar, and even when he's a kid and he opens the food storage and there's like a crowd of hungry kids that kind of come in, Templar is almost always portrayed in those moments as just one amongst a crowd. There's usually a close-up at one point where it's telephoto, where you focus on him because he's loud and in the center of frame, but the background is blurred and basically becomes quickly moving shapes behind him. And I think that that's important, that it's not like he's one amongst the crowd, because that is a thing that we think of when we think of spies. But when you just think about like the shapes, like geometrically what's happening here, this kind of implies like a wild world directly outside our purview, but emphasizes that he's kind of this foreground static calmness, right? As the protagonist. And this serves kind of as the same purpose as the crucifix on the plane. the dynamic of this high speed, in the case of I just brought up of the background, and in the case of like the crucifix, this foreground element, giving this sense of static versus speed. That dynamic is kind of what emphasizes more that this guy is slow, right? Sometimes the best way is not just to show the fact that the turtle is slow, but to introduce something like the hair that kind of shows how slow he is.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
an exercise in contrasts.
Yeah, exactly. So it kind of consciously or subconsciously places him outside of this like world of chaos, which I think is a nice touch. And all the while keep giving the element of control and safety without needing to say a goddamn thing, even though all the script is, emphasizing all this stuff. And more on kind of the dynamics here. The speed dynamic doesn't just end with what's inside frame relative to what's inside frame. It also deals with like editing and pacing. So if you look at a few scenes in the movie where Templar isn't in like the scene, and you start to pick up the speeds of other characters, and I do think you should watch The Saint for the third time and note it,
Okay.
point
Right.
and see exactly how like I think this is dialed in, like how the director frames those and blocks those sequences. Think about how fast or how much momentum is in those sequences. The Trediac scenes, they're almost always in motion. Usually they're walks and talks. The camera's much faster. The scenes are never people sitting. They're people moving around each other. And the edits start to kind of speed up. There's a sense of urgency in those scenes that just don't exist with Kilmer scenes. And I'd argue this contrast, again, emphasizes the different speeds we're following in the Kilmer scenes. Like, it's done so that you notice that it's slower with Kilmer. It feels like home. It feels like a, comforting calmness. Also, if you notice in the son, Trediac's son, who's a fantastic role player in this movie.
His hair is beautiful.
His hair is outrageous.
Unbelievable.
He's got his cane. He's got
his cane. Why does he have a cane?
He's got a ring with cocaine in it. He is halfway to Dracula.
He is the most Bond villain of anyone in this movie by leagues.
It's
amazing. Silly. He even gets the weird scarred up face by the end. It's like there needed to be more with this guy, obviously.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Just fuck him up. Make him a super villain.
So silly. Anyway.
It's so good. Yeah. All of his scenes, he's followed by an entourage, and they're encouraged to like move around and be like riled up and stuff, right? Like there's flashes of speed and just terms of like hand gestures happening and all that shit.
They're kind of like Moby Dick too. Like they just show up any old place. Like they're ubiquitous.
They're a gang, right?
Yeah.
The whole idea is that like, yeah, we're here now, and they're like, yeah, we're going to muscle up the place. So they make their presence known, right? Which is what I think that's what the script wants, right? It's this gang of like he's a Nepo baby. He's been empowered by the fact that his dad is super influential in the state. And he's got like buddy with KGB. I'm sure some of his entourage is KGB. Like he's that. It's as simple as like the John Wick. With what's his name, the Greyjoy boy from Game of Thrones. Yeah, Theon.
Yeah.
Theon in John Wick, the original.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
He's the same kind of thing. He's like this garbage son, He's just distractions the whole time he's on screen. It's just like the edit speed up. His motions are like a lot more distracting. And again, it's through his introduction, which is like this, like the middle section of the movie, like not part of Act 1 and the beginning of Act 2, his introduction that kind of happens there. That's contrasted with almost all the romance scenes with Kilmer and Shu. And those scenes have like identical slow dolly speeds, right? And the editing is a lot more meditative. There's almost no sudden movements at all, which just can't be as far from what we just saw in that last scene and in the next scene that we're going to see. So it's the dynamics of the pacing of the film. It even becomes a joke at one point where like Trediak's son is like, he ends every scene with him making like a sudden thrust with his fist, like a supervillain. He doesn't have a cape, but he has a large coat and he like sweeps it around and he's turning around like a Dracula because he's so pissed off. I don't know. I think that shit's all intentional. There's a reason why they have different speeds. And I think it's to once again emphasize the Kilmer speed. So all this stuff
you don't see. I do. You don't see characters like this slowed down to this degree. It's so much more of a villain thing in movies like this for the character to be slow and deliberate. Like, you know,
like you were mentioning Dr. No.
Yeah, well, right. That's kind of the way, right? Is like, you're so full of fury, Mr. Bond, right? Like, because they're usually the one in control, and your protagonist needs to find a way to overcome them, which is why they're in motion when we meet them together. Right? Like, again, to use in 2 episodes in a row, I guess, The Dark Knight is another good example. Joker is seated in the scene where we meet him, where he and Batman are finally together. And Batman's the one sort of like, you know, futzing around, trying to get him to tell him where Dent is, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So it's unusual. You don't see it a lot.
Right. To kind of flip it. And yeah, because, I mean, there's a cool and collective aspect of James Bond. There's a cool and collected aspect of Ethan Hunt, but they're both a lot more... like violence can happen at any point,
well,
you know?
Ethan Hunt, to have some of this conversation now, is almost perennially in motion in Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, was a year earlier than this. So it's pretty clear there was like, everyone in Hollywood was like, we got to find an American James Bond. We got to make that.
Right.
You know? And like everyone was trying to figure out what's it going to be. And it turned out to be Mission Impossible, basically. And maybe a little bit Jason Bourne. But now that I know there's a book series here, this was clearly an attempt to make this the next American James Bond, right? Like, that was the idea.
Yeah.
So,
but it just didn't do well enough. It got its money back. It didn't fail. It just wasn't a runaway success like Mission Impossible.
Yeah, I have some theories on that, but we'll talk about it at the end. Because I don't want to derail your argument here.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
Just talk shit on the Saint.
No, it's not about talking shit. It's about, like, I think the things that you're admiring about this movie are accurate, and I think that's just not the right idea for a repeatable blockbuster.
Yeah, there's probably truth to that.
Yeah, that's all. I think Val Kilmer really wanted to seep into the fun of a guy with no identity. Right. And, you know, we don't like guys with no identity. Even Jason Bourne, it's about recovering his identity. You know, like,
that's true.
We like our spies to be a specific guy.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just kind of a tricky idea. Anyway, that's all. I don't want to derail your point.
No, I mean, I'm thinking about Jack Ryan right now.
And Jack Ryan is not much. There's not much to him, but
he's long-standing, baby.
Well,
he's been around forever.
This guy directed a bunch of those Jack Ryan movies.
Yeah, he did. He did Patriot Games and he did Clear
So
and
this is
Present
the
Danger,
second
baby.
time we've covered this guy on this channel.
Nice.
Nice. Freaking nice, bro. He did Bone Collector. This guy's directed a lot of stuff.
Yeah, he's the Bone
Sliver,
Collector, dude.
You know?
Salt.
Yeah,
he did Salt.
Yeah.
In 2010.
Dead Calm in 1989.
You know, if I remember, because I actually am looking at it right now, the cover to the poster for Salt.
Yeah, with Angelina Jolie.
What the tagline for Salt is?
I'm so ready for it. Please.
Who is Salt?
God.
Which is a terrible tagline, I just want to say. But also, it speaks to exactly what you're saying. Like, it's all about figuring out who they are, which I think the Saint has in spades. Who is the Saint?
That they lean on that intrigue a lot, and yeah, anyway, well, let's come back to it because I don't want to get all off on it right
You're
now.
saying there's a particular type of guy who is also salt, I would argue.
I think we want an answer we believe at the end, and I don't think we get one from the Saint.
That's fair.
I don't believe that guy is going to stay with Elizabeth Shue. Why would I?
Yeah.
Why would you?
I mean, that's what spies do.
Well, but then the movie isn't clear about whether or not their love is real.
I mean, the movie is pretty clear. It's like, we're going to be together forever.
Yeah, but
that's what it says.
It does say that, and I'm like, I don't believe you.
But I think it's because you got the James Bond brain, and America is like, nah. We have to kill, either the wife dies or the new wife.
Always new wife. Yeah. I mean, hey man, sure. They tried to give
you're preaching to the
They
choir,
tried to
man.
give Ethan Hunt a wife, and they killed her off pretty quick.
They killed her off so quick.
So
can't have wife.
Yeah, can't have it. Not if you're in the spy game.
No,
Spy games. That's a movie.
Wives get offed in spy games.
Well, that's the danger of being a spy with wife.
God damn it, it's so true.
It's a single life if you're spy with wife.
No spy wife.
No spy wife.
So that's one thing. Let's get back to the Saint, baby. And let's get back to what I love about the Saint.
Okay.
Which you said was, I think the point you were making was that's the best. That's when we're at our best. So all this stuff kind of happens in terms of, the dynamics of speed here and there between different characters to really showcase Kilmer's particular brand of speed. And we're trying to organize, that's helpful because we're trying to organize how they behave or how they see the world. This all happens in introductions. And then once we get kind of halfway through the film, it does become like a kind of long chase sequence, one after another. Yeah. And this necessitates that Kilmer has to move quickly. It's an action movie eventually, after all, right? It can't just be an hour of introduction, which is what this movie is, by the way. It's not a lot of action up front. But I thought that would just abandon my theory, right? I would be like, and there's still a good argument for the fact that this movie has to kind of stop playing around with the slower speeds in order to
deliver
make
a spy film. Right.
Yeah, and make scenes exciting, but it's funny because if you look at a lot of the action sequences here, where they use some techniques that I'm like, oh my god, these techniques are exclusively for Kilmer. Like, they don't do it for the other stuff. And one of the big ones that I noticed is that when he's running around, or, dipping into obscurity or whatever, because almost all action sequences in The Saint are he's running away. He's not shooting everyone. He's getting away, which is, I would argue a big difference from the James Bonds and the Ethan Hunts, right?
Definitely. I mean, I think Tom Cruise is determined to make you watch him get away,
explode a face or two.
I mean, that he believes that is cinema, from what I can tell. No, for real, he does.
I mean, it might be Mission Impossible.
No,
I would argue
it's all of his movies.
All his movies.
He runs in all of his movies. It's like a bit.
Well, running is one thing. I'm talking about how the Saint is kind of he's kind of he doesn't beat people up. He runs away from everything.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, that wasn't. I thought you meant in a sense he still controlled movements. Okay,
No. Kilmer is the Saint is unique in that he's a spy who runs away from problems. He doesn't shoot them.
No, you're right about that. Sure.
Yeah, but when he's running, so when you're running away, how do you show people running around and running away? Usually, you want the most emphasized kind of drastic momentum occurring in those sequences, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't do that, which might be a testament to why you felt like it didn't ever really truly hit, because even in those sequences, there's always at least one shot, and it's usually the main shot of that sequence. He gets away or something like that, where they show that he's center punched, which is not conventional wisdom for when you want to see someone in frame go far. right? You want to see him go from left to right, up or down, right to left. You want to see movement because that implies momentum. This movie does not do that. He's center punched almost all the time there, and the camera is either static itself or it tracks with him so that his movement becomes center punch and stays center punch. So we never see a drastic change of visual momentum at all.
So we're literally orbiting him still.
Yeah,
visually orbiting him.
Often when he gets away in terms of horizontal and vertical real estate of the frame, he's just locked in. And then never in transit between cuts. And what I mean by that is that he doesn't leave the frame edge, there's a cut, he enters the frame. That's typically how you show motion in, like, I don't know, pick an action movie. But the camera orbits him, like you say, while he stays central to the composition in this movie. And I think that that's pretty cool. It's almost like the editing and the camera are fixated on him as well. You get this a lot in documentary style movies. You know, you don't get it in Bourne because Bourne is just like, let's cut everywhere. So it's hard to even
wild.
make a...
Yeah, it gets wilder
It's hard
too.
to even make a visual strategy out of that isn't talking about editing, because sometimes the cuts are so drastic you're like, I didn't even know what that composition was. But in documentary style movies, you emphasize the feeling of being a fly on the wall, right? And I'm not saying documentaries, I mean, yeah, but like movies that employ that style, it's almost like this movie's doing that because it's employing kind of the results of the documentary style, which is keep things center punch, don't have, like, leave them, if we're going to cut out of something, cut to a similar composition. You don't want to emphasize momentum. And that's what happens in this movie. This movie, even in their action sequence, when we're following Kilmer, he's almost always like, it's the filmmaking is suppressing the momentum. And I think that that's pretty cool.
It's certainly antithetical. You know what I mean? And like, it is cool in that it's an interesting design choice, and also cool in that it's the opposite of what you expect a spy movie to do.
Which is maybe, that's why I kind of made the statement, maybe that's why this didn't do particularly well.
Yeah.
Because the Saint is this character, and the director was like, I want to be beholden to that kind of standard that we put on the Saint. That's how you shoot the Saint, right? But that's not what we want out of a spy.
It's interesting because it does make sense. There's a logic to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that it's like, yeah, it just undoes the reason we want to watch this, you know. And maybe it's because the director understood something about the Saint that an executive didn't understand, which is this guy's actually more of a slow creeping, brooding type of story. Like, that's actually what's interesting about him. It's not the caper he's in. It's
the mystery of who he is.
Yeah, what really motivates him.
Because I think the movie wants you to be fixated on him, right? He's charismatic, and you can tell that he can turn on that charisma like crazy. And so the movie wants your eyes glued to him. And if your assignment is to direct the eye in that way, it might be smart to keep your other characters on the fringes, your protagonist dead center, stuff that is not typically, you know, par for the course for, you know, like an action movie. Even like a Die Hard is like an opposite to this, right?
Oh, absolutely.
He's in motion in space all the time. That's the whole reason Die Hard is awesome. To me, that's what works about Die Hard.
Reason.
I mean, it's why we remember that versus any number of,
sure.
You know, like, I mean, I guess, you know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just John McClane is awesome. Bruce Willis is awesome. It doesn't matter. But I think it's Hans Gruber. I think it's the camera. I think it's all that stuff that's making it work. And I would argue that that's true about Val Kilmer and The Saint. I don't know.
I love your love for this. It's dumb, and I love it.
It is dumb.
It's dumb how much you love it. I do like a lot of this guy's movies, though. I'm looking at his list. I'm like, wow, I really like this guy's movies.
Yeah, it is interesting that he's also the Jack Ryan guy, because Jack Ryan is also like a contemplative kind of...
Yeah. Maybe I just bought the premise of that more. It's
Yeah, I mean, it's not, that one's not far fetched. It's just like, what if a technician became like a field agent?
well, the Saint very
What if a
clearly
statistician?
feels like let's make GoldenEye, but like let's do an American GoldenEye that's repeatable. Everything about it feels very curated to be like, you liked GoldenEye, you'll like the Saint.
Mhm.
You know, it didn't quite
That
work.
might be, yeah. I mean, the Russian stuff doesn't help in that regard. Everything was Russian. It feels like, well, this is just GoldenEye, right?
Well, and I also think that GoldenEye had a more interesting Russia than this one did. You know,
Maybe so.
yeah, I mean, it's just we're just
talk.
running through buildings in this movie, like, you know, in GoldenEye, you know, you're getting like an actual industrial complex and like a military bathroom, and then you're running a tank through like, you know, St. Petersburg or whatever, and it's rad. You know what I mean? Like this movie, it's like, yeah, you're through sewers and stuff. It just didn't really do it.
But like he's super cold, and like
Sure,
Elizabeth Shue has to take her shirt off.
I know that
That's
you
like
her.
a tank.
I know that you like her.
That's like a tank.
So this is the same year as Leaving Las Vegas, isn't it? Big year for her.
97.
Yeah, really big year for her.
Yeah. It's pretty
big
sweet.
year for Abe too, if he's a big Shoe fan.
I'm a big Shoe fan.
Big Shoe boy.
When did Palmetto come out?
Palmetto? What's that?
You don't even know Palmetto?
No, what's
dude?
that? Is that another shoe
You're
film?
not a true shoe head. Woody Harrelson?
I don't know if I saw it.
Gina Gershon? Palmetto is 1998. So that's a year after The Saint.
No, I need to see this movie. What is it?
Yeah, oh yeah, you do. Here's what I'm reading off IMDb as the log line. A recently released ex-con gets involved in a fake kidnapping scheme that turns very real. Yeah, that's about
sure.
right.
Okay. But I like Elizabeth Shue in it. I'm excited about her in it.
Yeah. Woody Harrelson's in there too.
I'm looking this movie up.
Not enough love for Palmetto.
Look this stupid movie up.
Any of my Palmetto heads out there. Look.
Look. Yeah.
Look.
Sure, try to focus us now, Abe. Sure.
Yeah,
look, man.
Palmetto's great. No, I just want my final thought. Because I do think that, like, I don't know, like we do so often on this podcast, like scene work is definitely something that is a collaboration between the actor and the director, and obviously the nuance and the characterization is the actor's domain. But there's ways that the director can supplement kind of where the story goes, and they have a lot of tools. I'm just pointing out that blocking, that alone has considerations that involve speed, duration, angles, like you can have pauses and all that, and you can use that to kind of emphasize what that character might mean. And the director also chooses what's in frame, means they can choose relevant images in frame to kind of surround your character or not surround your character, but they also choose the speed of like other scenes and dynamics between a scene, what comes before or next to it, and what that makes you feel like, well, this is slower or this is faster. That all matters. And I think something like The Saint absolutely doesn't need a director that is thinking about how to accomplish like this, like a deeper or like a detailed world in that way. But it's nice to know when introducing and framing a character that, you know, Philip took some steps to inform us just with physicality, how that character kind of inhabits the world. It could just be static shot, reverse shot, and you could just do faces doing the talking, but that's boring. And The Saint is not boring. It's dope.
Okay.
That's the end of my rant.
I love it.
That's why I decided to talk about The Saint today.
You love this movie so much. I watched this movie for the first time 3 years ago for this show, hoping to find a theory on it so that I could finally have an excuse to watch it. Didn't. So that just shows the ways that your brain is superior to mine. You know, you found something.
You know. I've seen a lot of The Saint, so I know what to look for. You know?
Like, it's kind of a shame to me that here we have like the two most fun characters from Top Gun, Iceman and Maverick, both in American spy thrillers, and Maverick just pulled a split S on him here. You know what I mean? Like, just completely outdoes Iceman again. You know?
Yeah,
because Mission Impossible is great. Tom
Cruise of it all.
It's really great. And some of the characters that Val Kilmer does as the Saint were really dumb. Like, really dumb.
Yeah.
Dumb and bad, and like nobody believes that. Get out of here. Like, get right out of here.
Yeah.
It's very hokey.
You know, like he's like Thomas Beckett. He goes by Thomas Beckett at one point, you know? And that's really cool because that's the name of a saint.
I like I wish the Catholic thing was a bit more present in his character. Like, I don't mind it as like, okay, like this is just his weird affectation, but the movie sort of suggested the man was going to be haunted by guilt and stuff. You know, like he's got a Catholic sort of complex that makes him run from stuff. And they didn't get into that, and that actually would have made him more fun and complicated.
I think the idea is that because it's a franchise, they wanted to, you know, reveal that slowly, and that does, but I mean, it doesn't take away from your, you know, criticism.
I'm not saying
nice
that
up front.
It's not bad. It just could have been better if they'd gotten into that, is my argument. You know? There was more to be mined here that would have made this guy a more memorable character. Like, I don't think you can do Dr. No now.
Mm-hmm.
And for people to be like, oh yeah, I want to see a bunch more of this character just because he's in a scheme, which is why the Bourne Identity was so successful. Like, the Bourne Identity took the concept of the Saint and put it much more front and center, and made it a plot element. You know, not just a cute little wink that we're doing at each other.
I mean, they did the amnesia thing. That's different.
But it's also who is this guy?
But,
who are you?
The question is, who are they? Because the whole point of the Saint is he's never really going to tell you.
Right, you never know who he is, and we don't get an ending that says that, which we should have.
I mean, he does say at the end, he's like, his whole point is that he's got to get that sweet money. And then at the last minute, he gives away $1 trillion industry, which he could have had a piece of.
Well, that's another thing that really feels bad about this movie, I think, is that...
Oh, you just didn't buy that offer?
Well, no, I didn't buy that, and I think the fact that he's so mercenary about money is sort of unlikable. You know, like, it's truthful about spies, probably, but it's really, really just not interesting. You know,
you just don't want that. You don't want that as your main guy.
I just don't root for him. Yeah, I'm not like, oh, I hope he gets $50 million and not 48.
It's always to do justice. It's always to make the world better.
Or
it's
like, you know, he's haunted by a memory.
Money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's just a lizard brain thing. You know, it's not that it's not okay. It's that, like, when I know that's his motive, I'm just not as interested in him.
You just like, fuck this guy a little bit.
I mean, not fuck this guy, just I'm not invested in him. That's all. Like, I'm not like, oh yeah, I'm really rooting for that. That's something I care about for him.
See, it's what I look for, man.
Yeah. If he can get him to 50 mil, Abe's on board. Abe's voting him in.
That's the shit I'm talking about.
Hey, I wish you could do a Philip Noyce cast.
I don't know if he deserves that. There's a lot of directors out there.
We could talk about Sliver for a good hour.
Yeah, we probably could.
And Clear and Present Danger, that's 2 hours right there. I love that movie.
You know what I've been doing for the last, 10 minutes?
I'm excited.
I've been looking up saints' names, right? And there's great ones. You know, there's Saint Stephen Harding and Saint Thomas Beckett and Saint Edmund Campion.
There you go.
And then there's just one motherfucker who's just Saint Chad.
That's all. That's your guy. He's
just
yours.
Chad. That's crazy.
Yeah, Saint Chad. That he could have named himself that.
He could have. What if he was going around? What if the saint was going around and he's just like Chad, no last name?
That would be.
I don't know why that's really funny to me.
I mean, that is funny because nobody's real name is Chad, right? Chad is like a name that it's a surname, or a name you make from like Chester or whatever, right?
Yeah, Charles, I believe.
Yeah, Charles. Yeah.
Yeah, that all makes sense. Maybe I overdid it.
It's funny. The Saint is good. Everything you've said is good.
Yeah.
Everything.
He's the Saint, baby.
Yeah. I want to talk more about Palmetto. Does that mean the podcast is over? What do I need to know about Palmetto? Can you give me some information?
Didn't I give you exactly what you need to know?
I'm looking at the cover box now. It's Woody Harrelson cheating on two very hot women. Is that what it is?
Yeah,
that's what it looks like.
It's a neo-noir.
Wow, I kind of want to watch it now.
And he's a man with a past.
Oh, really?
He's corrupt. He's been framed. What else happens in Palmetto? I don't know. A lot of dead people. A lot of dead women.
Why was Woody Harrelson in the 90s like this weird noir protagonist in a bunch of movies? Because he was. You know what I mean? Like this movie and also what's the one where he sells his wife for money? What's that one called?
White Men Can't Jump.
No. No, it's he sells his wife Demi Moore to Robert Redford for one night, right? What's that one called?
Indecent
Proposal. Yeah, that movie and a bunch of others.
He's kind of like in every guy. He's an average Joe. He's
but
Woody
like a sleazy
type.
average Joe. That's who we thought he was in the 90s.
He's a little bit sleaze.
Yeah, that's our beliefs about
if that's
Woody
what
Harrelson.
you're looking for.
Hey, if you're looking for sleaze,
Palmetto is the movie for you, buddy.
Yeah, is that a sleaze fest?
It's pretty sleazy.
Yeah, it's
pretty
just
sexy.
Calling itself Palmetto as though that's a thing I would know is already like, well, you better be something good.
Yeah,
you better be doing something good.
Hey, baby, it's Palmetto.
It sounds like something you mix in your drink.
It's like amaretto.
It's like I literally don't. I remember this cover box from when I worked at Blockbuster, and I remember thinking I want to see that and never watched it. That's right. Here's a list of things he was in that reinforce how creepy he was after 1993 when he was in Indecent Proposal, Natural Born Killers.
Oh yeah,
Money Train, Kingpin, The People versus Larry Flint.
Oh yeah,
Welcome to Sarajevo.
Oh yeah,
I don't know what he plays in Wag the Dog. It's been too long. I don't remember.
Palmetto.
Welcome to Hollywood. He blows his dick off in The Thin Red Line.
He does blow his dick off in The Thin Red Line. Ed TV,
Sleaze Central,
Sleaze Town.
Anyway, you get it. Yeah, it's just everything.
That's right.
It's literally everything. His episode of Frasier where they all had an orgy. I remember that one.
Oh, classic Frasier.
Yeah, classic.
The orgy episode.
Yep, orgy.
Where he's like, Niles, I want to fuck like 8 women tonight.
How could you do this, Niles, without inviting me? Right?
And John Mahoney's like, if I don't have to leave my recliner. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then the dog starts barking, gets involved in the orgy. It's great.
I remember it. Classic episode. It's a very special episode.
Toss salad and scrambled eggs. That's a sex move. That is a sex move.
Can we be out of this podcast now?
Yeah, let's get the fuck out of here. We hit our 1 hour.
Great.
We've hit our 1 hour mark, which means, you know what that means?
It
means we don't have to do shit. And
thank God.
Swaim has nothing on us. He can't tell us that we...
Finally, 1 hour less of beatings.
And that's how we're going to wrap this episode.